we're going to want to assess the child using blood chemistry analysis. What is the overall health status of the child? Could they possibly have an underlying anemic problem? Do they have viruses? Do they have any blood sugar problems? I've seen several major things that I've examined for with children. Problems with an H. pylori infection, adrenal gland problems, parasites. And then we'll want to address those. You know, we may want to, if it's a really severe infection, we may want to send them out to their medical doctor so that they can actually get a script and kill whatever that bug is. Or we may want to use supplementation, which I utilize to actually, to actually kill that viral pattern or bacterial pattern. So that we can really get that child healthy so that we can retrain the pathways of the brain. Also, one of the things that we see with these children is that we see a lot of genetic predispositions to having gluten, egg, soy, and possibly egg and yeast sensitivities. So I do a genetic test to determine if this child could possibly have a sensitivity. And we know that we're going to have to rule that out and actually remove that stressor from their diet, because that can affect them neurologically, and it can really affect their ability to heal and also have appropriate amount of fuel to be able to do this type of therapy. Then we strengthen the brain and its connections. We support it nutritionally with supplementation and diet and fix the problem permanently. So the functional nutrition that I use are actually supplements that I use that are designed to increase specific biochemical pathways and improve the biomarkers. So we're not going to just want to give general supplements. We're actually going to want to test and determine what they need and then retest to see how they're doing. For example, if a child has, for example, a genetic sensitivity to wheat or soy or egg, definitely we're going to want to remove those things. And we're also going to want to dampen their immune response, because generally if they've been exposed to these types of foods for a long period of time, it's going to cause a lot of gut damage. And we know that we've got to dampen that immune response. We can't shut off the immune system. We can just dampen it using specific supplementation. We also want to use enzymes to help digest these partial peptides. For example, casein and gluten. There's actually supplements that can help break down those things in the gut that have formed over maybe a lifetime. So we want to try to get rid of those and take those detrimental foods out of the diet. I also use brain-based supplements to decrease brain inflammation, so certain neurotransmitters, and also promote oxygen for brain healing. Treatment protocols. So generally, what we're going to want to use, depending upon where the imbalance is, we may use balance training, postural exercises, auditory stimulation, visual tracking, light stimulation, olfactory stimulation, metronome adjustments, rhythm and timing exercises, and functional nutrition. So the interesting thing about this is you may have taken your child to a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, and generally, they're out to really help this child get better. But usually their approach is to balance the both sides of the body. So when they're exercising, they're generally working on both sides of the body. The thing that is so different about this type of work is that we actually have to localize where the lesion is in the brain and stimulate that area specifically, which is going to be really specific for each child. So every child wouldn't necessarily need balance training or auditory stimulation or visual stimulation. It's actually specific to where that weak area is in the brain. So it's extremely important to be specific, because you don't want to work both sides of the body. You actually want to really work where that specific malfunction is. That is really the only way to actually balance out the brain without making one side more dominant. So it's very important to be specific with this. Metronome, the interactive metronome, again, it gives me the ability to test and track their ability to move in response to sound. And also I can check their how healthy are they metabolically? Are they getting fatigued after 1 or 2 exercises? If that is the case, we know that they're not getting appropriate fuel. They're not either from a chemical or from a metabolic standpoint on a cellular level, or they're not getting enough oxygen. And we know that that's really important to know too, because you know, generally you're going to want to make sure that child is healthy enough to withstand therapy. For example, exercises and you know, brain-based therapy. They actually have to be healthy enough to endure that. So you have to make sure that the child is not fatiguing quickly, in which case, if they are, like I mentioned, we're going to have to address the gut issues and work with them on the appropriate supplementation and diet. And we're going to also want to just basically work on balancing those hemispheric imbalances. When we actually balance out the brain, we see that the child is generally able to control their impulses a lot better. They're able to focus and complete tasks. They're able to get better grades. They're able to be better adjusted at home, well adjusted at home, and complete their chores. And we find that this is a huge, huge, huge impact on the family and the family dynamic. And that's one of the things I just love about what I do, is really being able to see that child change and adapt and get better, and see the family respond as well. And even in many cases, you know, the family makes these dietary changes along with them, and we're able to see, you know, that the parents are able to be healthier too. So it's quite rewarding and such a gratifying, you know, job that I have. So again, food reactivity. When we talk about gluten and casein, many of you may be well aware that gluten and casein are a problem for children, especially, you know, with mild autism. So basically, a lot of the children, if they have a genetic problem, they can lack enzymes to fully digest these proteins of gluten and casein. So they actually become partial peptides. Those partial peptides are gluteomorphin or caseomorphin. These attach to opiate receptors in the brain. So for example, many of you may have had this experience where your child has, you know, demanded that they have ice cream or demanded that they have milk or wheat products, and you know, you see how they respond. They become stoned, spacey, zoned out, or they become hyper, right? They have huge tantrums when they're not able to get that food, because they actually have an addiction for that food, because it feeds those brain cells in an inappropriate or in a bad manner. So they're actually you know, create like an addictive like quality to them. So we know that if that is the case, based on our testing, again, we've got to get rid of those foods, and that really helps with the behavior. And it also helps calm down the child's immune system so that it can heal, their body can heal. When the gluten-sensitive person or genetically gluten-sensitive person or child eats these types of foods, they actually get a huge immune response in their brain, where they activate these different microglial cells, and it causes the brain tissue to become damaged and inflamed. So it actually is damaging the brain every time they eat this food. So this is a huge problem, because when we damage the brain, it causes almost like an autoimmune reaction, and it affects specifically the cerebellum, which is the balance and coordination center of the brain. So these kids get, you know, they can actually get really problems with balance and movement.